All right, that does it for 3 on 5. Let's hit up the Certified Hotline and bring in our special guest, NBA and WNBA skills coach, Alex Bazzell. Alex, what's going on, man? How you doing, bro?
I'm doing good, man. I appreciate you guys having me on.
You're now part of the treasured club that the late, great Kobe Bryant kind of put at the forefront, the Girl Dad Club.
That's right, the Girl Dad Club.
You actually worked with Kobe, so now that you are a girl dad and, you worked with him at the Mamba Academy, does it kind of just make that experience even more special and meaningful and, kind of sad also?
I think it is even more special. And a lot of it is because of when you watch the way he was with Gigi and his other daughters, you never really truly understand until you are a father. So it really made me appreciate all the lessons that he was teaching me without him knowing he was teaching me. So there's a lot of lessons that I learned from him that weren't necessarily basketball related. I think the most I learned from him was off the court. And I think that's what's most important at the end of the day. And that's what he was teaching the world to see, and being a great father more than a great basketball player or businessman, or anything else. And I think that was the most important thing that he taught men, to really take advantage of that relationship with a daughter, and not put too many expectations that were his expectations on her. And I think that was the most important thing that I wish a lot of parents would see. And I know, Chris, you deal with a lot of athletes as well. And I think at times we see parents try to live vicariously through their kids, and it places a really unhealthy relationship on them. Sure. And the reason I was able to probably step in at the right time wasn't because Kobe thought I was going to be a better trainer for Gigi. It was because he wanted to have that relationship. That was way more important than what kind of player she turned out to be. And I think that was really cool for me to be a part of.
Absolutely. I've heard of your company multiple times. We have a couple mutual friends through the lens. But reading the description that we have here in the rundown, which is, helping athletes position themselves in Web3, that's different from what I've heard before, right? Because I believe before it was more so kind of like almost like a masterclass type of thing. Am I right on that? Can you talk to me about the change in direction and where you guys are headed with Through the Lens now?
Yeah, it's funny because, initially this whole concept I was positioning to put together for Kobe. So we had talked a lot about just trying to help athletes monetize, right?
Sure.
And control the content, control their IP, not give it away to the bigger brands. And that was always the positioning. So I think when we launched, what was cool about it was, obviously when Kobe passed away and COVID hit a couple months after, I came back to St. Louis just to decompress from everything. Yeah. And I got a call shortly thereafter from Carmelo Anthony, and Carmelo and I became really tight when he was out of the league. So he called me up out of the blue. We worked really closely. We developed a really tight relationship because he was at the bottom of probably where he's ever been. And it caused our relationship to expedite in that way because there was no false realities. It was just like, hey, here's what's going on. How do we fix this? How do we get you back to where you should be? So we became very close during that time. So he was the person that called me. I didn't realize Kobe and him had talked about what we were trying to do. So he was like, listen, I don't know what you guys were thinking of. Bring me in on it. Let me help. Let me get this thing rolling. So that was where everything kind of kick-started back off. So Carmelo Anthony became a co-founder, first person to put money in the business, which was huge. As you know, like it's nice to get that level of commitment. And it wasn't even necessarily, the whole business model wasn't flushed out at all. He was just like, listen, I believe in you as a brother and I want to help. Where can I help? And that was probably the most gratifying thing about it all. At the end of the day, it's just about relationships, right? Like the money's going to come and go. The everything that we talk about is really tangible, right? And relationships are long lasting. So when we launched, you're right. We launched under the concept of trying to be a masterclass for sports, and really with the evolution of Web3 and really tending towards athletes being able to control that IP even further, it was kind of a no-brainer transition. So, it was a lot of conversations that we had with previous athletes from, Kyrie Irving, I'm very tight with, and he's obviously in the know on all that as well. Yeah. Kevin Durant came in and invested, which has been awesome. So it's been a lot of conversations and knowing and living with an athlete and knowing all the hoops they have to jump through just to really, you have to sacrifice, right? Whatever it is, like there comes a price and you have to weigh, should I control all this or should I give up a lot of that for the upfront check? And now with the evolution of Web3, you've gotten rid of that a little bit. So that's what I'm most excited about.
I want to ask you about Carmelo. Kobe Bryant, my all-time favorite player. Carmelo's also on that list. I'm a Knicks fan, so I had a lot of pleasant memories with Carmelo. I also absolutely loved his memoir. I thought it was so insightful and just vulnerable and just, so many things. If you didn't know about Melo, now you knew after reading that book. But we've seen him transition. We've seen him go from the famous hoodie Melo when they asked him if he was coming off the bench and he said, who's coming off the bench? And now you see him in LA and he's willing to do whatever he has to do, whatever role he has to be. In your conversations from point A to point B, what is something about him that people are unaware of that had led to that drastic switch in his personality and his willingness to put his ego to the side and be whatever he needed to be to whatever team he was a part of?
That's a good question. And I think the thing that people don't know most about Melo is he has an incredible amount of self-awareness, which has allowed him to transition, right? Well, you see a lot of former superstars, and I think we can all agree Melo was a superstar. And it's hard to give that up, right? Because there's a lot of ego at play. And then there's a lot of media narratives that are then put out and spun out. And to kind of swallow your pride and say, okay, I'm not the player I was, but I can still be a huge asset to a championship team or to a playoff team. And I think it was taking that first step and then deciding, okay, now what do we need to do to get you back in a position, right? Because a lot of it at the start was just, we had to change the narrative, right? And we had to let people know that Melo was open to playing a role, that was open to coming off the bench. He knew he had to work on his defense. It was all these is like, if we can just be transparent, then no one can say you're not willing to do those things. So that was probably step number one before we talked about anything technical on court.